Welcome to Upgrad Grassroots. I am Siddharth Vinayak Patankar. I'm editor-in-chief at Car and Bike, and I have spent a long time in the media industry, specifically at NDTV, where I have had the privilege to work for 2 decades. That time at NDTV has taught me a lot, obviously, and I hope to share some of that with you today. So the first tip that I have is a very basic one: mastering the language, because that's really like the first building block or the first step where you could really start your journey from when you want to communicate. And it could be any language, and you have to remember that not only do you have to speak it well, write it well, understand it well, so that you use the right words where they are meant to be used, but you also have to understand that that is the language that your audience is expecting from you, or that's the language that they want you to speak to them in. This, of course, is the first premise of why you are speaking that language in the first place. So know your audience. It could be one person, it could be 5 people, it could be a whole community of people or 1 million people. Knowing what they want or what they value, that's the first key. And therefore, having an effective and good command on that language will just help you. It'll be your best friend. My second tip is trying to understand how you can hold people's interest by actually telling them a story, because as a communicator, you are a storyteller. Now, when you're building a narrative, it's not always possible for it to be relatable, but trying to make it relatable or easy to understand helps your narrative. And so that means instead of jumping straight into the information, you could first give a little bit of a background. You could also try and help set that context. So trying to give a little bit of context, a little bit of background without droning on can sometimes really help you with your narrative, because then it actually forms a narrative. Otherwise, it would literally be rattling off a list of facts or just information. So the third tip is that while you may have mastered what it is you want to tell people, and maybe you come up with a style that you think is totally your own, and you are happy and confident with that, but is that enough? Not always, because, well, it depends on who you're talking to or who you are giving this information to. That is just as important, because sometimes you could just be speaking in isolation. Why? Well, the audience could have tuned out after your first 3 words. So how do you make sure that that doesn't happen? Well, there's no 100% effective way, but you can be smart by first understanding who you're talking to and changing your style just a little bit. 1, to be able to relate to this audience, and also so they can relate to you, and 2, so that they actually listen. It's the language you use, it's the words you use, sure, but it's also your tone, it's also your style. Are you relaxed? Are you comfortable? Are you serious? Are you a little bit bookish? Depends on who you're talking to and what they expect from you. So me with my hands right now, your eye contact, just how your shoulders are relaxed or not, communicates lots of things to your audience. Effective communication has a lot of different aspects to it, and there's a lot of nuance to it. So my next tip would be about that nuanced communication. It's a nice word, but it actually means something. And I talked about how you have to know your audience and adapt to that, etc. But also the platform makes a huge difference. The tonality, how formal you are, how informal you are. If you're on Twitter, how concise you are. It all comes down to that. So you have to know where you are. You can't just be the same everywhere, because not only does the audience expect something different from you, because that's what brought them to that platform in the first place, but that's also how much more they'll pay attention to you. And so that brings me to a very crucial point: owning the subject matter, owning what you're talking about, and truly owning it. It's not easy, because sometimes you don't necessarily have that grasp on that particular subject. Sometimes you have time to prepare, sometimes you don't. But the whole idea here is to be able to understand firstly in your own mind where the limits are, so that you don't go into an area which is uncharted. That could put you into trouble if there's a Q&A, or if somebody asks you a counterpoint or challenges you on some information. So don't wing it. Don't make things up as you go. That's always very, very dangerous territory. Understand how much of this subject you are already aware of, and then make sure that you communicate that part effectively. But having said that, most times we do have some prep time, don't we? Going back and doing that work really will help you, because having that little background information, research, etc. at the back of your mind, well, that's again what will separate you from ineffective communication to being an effective communicator. So a picture is worth 1,000 words, but a video could be worth 10,000. Yes, I totally believe that, and not just because of what I do, but also I think because of the era that we live in. Take a look at everything that's happening around you right now, especially today. Everybody is expressing themselves through video. They don't just tell you about it, they show you. And I think how effectively you do that is what will hold people's interest, right? Because there are so many people doing it right now. So to give you an example, if I'm a reporter covering a huge election rally, I could write about it and I could tell you about the huge throngs of crowds that were there and all the support that they showed for a particular candidate or a party. Or I could simply just say, I'm going to ask this camera to now just pan and show you this massive crowd, and just standing here, you can sense their excitement. Look at their faces, look at their energy. They are here for a reason. They are totally behind this candidate. Just my expression, the fact that I raised my voice, will firstly get the attention of the audience, and then showing it to them, well, the proof is in the pudding, right? So I could tell you about a chocolate cake, or I could take a nice bite, tell you it's yummy, and then also tell you about the little hints of orange that I'm getting through it. That will tell you it's not just a regular chocolate cake, right? So yes, use video effectively because it is something that can be a massive tool for you. At the very start, I spoke about something that is also a very crucial tip for you, which is listening. Just as you want to be able to talk about what you want to communicate, remember to also listen to what others are communicating. Why? Well, in a particular situation, it might help you right away, but it could also give you something that you tuck away at the back of your brain and use later. Maybe it helps you to understand the audience because you might want to come back to them, and you might actually have a series of different instances or circumstances where you have to communicate with them. Understanding who they are, where they come from, what is important to them, all that comes only if you listen. And if you listen effectively, listen for what they care about. The audience will attach itself to what you're saying if they believe that you care. And the only way you can do that is not by pretending, but by actually listening. So when you listen, what are you really trying to do? Well, you're actually trying to relate to the audience. And remember, I'll keep saying this, it could be an audience of 1 or 1 million. Relating to them is important. And is it just because it's a box you've got to tick? Again, no. I think there are some people who are perhaps very good at communicating in a way where, yeah, you can sort of pretend and sort of get away with it. But for the most part, the relatability has to be real. And doesn't always mean that you have to transport yourself into somebody else's situation. It just means you have to try and understand. It means you have to care enough to make the effort to relate. So finally, the last tip, how do you cut through the clutter? 10 years ago, the clutter was less. Today, there is a lot of it. How do you cut through it? Well, there's no magic wand, and I wish there was one because I would love to use it. You have to just keep trying. Make sure that you're also thinking ahead, reinventing yourself if it's required, honing your own skills, making your own brand the viable thing that actually helps with the audience. Now, these are things we've talked about. You could be a lot easier if you look like George Clooney, sounded like James Earl Jones, and dressed like James Bond. But you can't really do all of those things now, can you? What then creates a lasting impression? It is something about your personality that has to shine. That is what helps you cut through the clutter. It could be an effective mastery over the language. Wow, he speaks so well. It could be your tonality. Wow, she's so relatable. It could be your friendliness, or it could be your body language. Wow, when they speak, I want to listen. That's the whole idea of being an effective communicator. So I hope my tips were helpful to you, and they do help you sometime in your life because, well, remember, the key is about how you react to all of this. Take it and make it your own. If you like this video, well, please subscribe, please share, and of course, hit the like button.